Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Appreciate you joining today's webinar presentation. Really excited about this topic around successful strategies for entering the market in China with great speakers here today. So first of all, just a little bit of background. My name is Craig McInnes. I'm the co-CEO, co-founder of MyCaribou. And we've built a global platform that really does three major things. Helps you build partnerships in over 150 countries. With over 22,000 manufacturers, distributor dealers in those countries. There's a set of tools that help you manage and collaborate with your partners all over the globe. And then we just recently gone live in a partnership with JP Morgan, Grain, and TransferMate, a foreign exchange, currency hedging, international payments platform as part of our overall offering, which is really exciting. In fact, we have a webinar coming up next Thursday, so Thursday, February 1st. Is a 30-minute webinar, so it's a shorter one, more of a Q&A format next Thursday. But I'll be joined by our Medtech financial expert, Robert Bass, as we dig into significant impacts of foreign exchange on Medtech organizations globally. Robert will address how currency volatility impacts manufacturers and distributors. We'll discuss how banks have historically charged high exchange rates, directly impacting your margins, and we'll discuss some strategies for improving profits for you and your distributors all over the world. And Angela's going to post a link to sign up for that webinar. Imagine most of you in the audience today, this would be something that would be of value to your distributors and potentially to you as well. So I'll bring that back up at the end again, just to remind everyone of that. I'd like to always show registrations. So we have registrations from all over the world, but we expected the breakdown to be similar to this. Heavy European, heavy Americas focus, which makes sense, given that we're talking about going into the market in China. And then in terms of distribution breakdown or breakdown between distributors and manufacturers, again, this would be expected, heavy focus here today with participants from the manufacturing side looking for strategies to get into the market in China. All right, so I'm really excited to be joined today by Hamish, and Alex today, as we discuss building successful market entry strategies for China. So a little bit of background. Based in Hong Kong, Hamish is CEO at SISMA, a regulatory and compliance consultancy for China, founded in 2002. With over 100 employees, his organization provides regulatory and compliance services for China and Hong Kong, including product registration, in-China testing, clinical studies and writing, regulatory communications, local agent, post-market surveillance, quality control, and audits. Hamish is a lawyer with extensive experience in regulatory fields, specializing in NMPA registrations and certifications. Thank you for joining us today, Hamish, and sorry for mispronouncing your name at the beginning. And then secondly, we've got, based in Beijing, Alex Nikityuk, has over 17 years experience in Medtech in China. Alex joined Interlink in 2017, bringing extensive business development experience in molecular diagnostics, immunology, and advanced health technologies, amongst others. Alex has collaborated with dozens of manufacturers, helping them successfully enter and excel in the competitive China medtech market. So thanks for joining as well today, Alex. Really excited to have two great speakers with a lot of in-depth knowledge on this market. And without any further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Hamish to get us started.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for hosting us. Yeah, I'm just going to make sure my slides show okay. And Craig, just to double check
You're
that
good.
you can
You're
see
good.
that.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. So thank you very much, Craig, and the MyCaribou team for hosting for this webinar. I'm going to speak for around 20-25 minutes about the successful China medtech market entry strategies from a regulatory perspective. And then Alex is going to talk in a bit more detail about some of the other broader issues for market access. So this part one is relating to regulatory strategy. Craig gave a brief introduction about our company and our business. Just to fill out a little bit to make it clear the perspective I'm talking from. I'm from Australia originally. I've been in Hong Kong for 8 years, which is now my home. I'm a lawyer by training, qualified in Australia and also qualified as a lawyer in Hong Kong. I worked at a Magic Circle firm here in Hong Kong before joining Kizema. We are a family business of around 100 staff. Most of those are in China. They're Chinese staff in China, who are the core regulatory clinical testing experts based on the ground in Beijing primarily, but also in a number of other cities. We also have outside of China those staff who can speak the languages of the customer, whether that's English, for North America, or Japanese for our Japanese customers, Korean, German, French, and so on. We cover various sectors. Medical device is our core sector, but also more broadly pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and some other sectors too. So that's a brief bit about the background and where I'm coming from the perspective today for the presentation. Here's an overview about the topics. So I'm going to touch on some recent registration trends from the latest data available for China registrations. I'm going to talk about some of the regulatory partnerships and pathways to the market, as well as challenges, timeline, and costs, and some localization questions, because this is often a question we get asked, as well as some top tips in the short time available. Please feel free to ask your questions at any time, and if we don't have time to address them all in the short time available, you can reach out at any time. Find me on LinkedIn or our company via our website, and I'll be pleased to answer anything I can. So first of all, I just wanted to give you a sense of the market size and trends in China. The latest data is from 2022. The 2023 year report will be coming out in the next couple of months. But some of this data just gives you a broad idea of market size. Of course, everyone knows China is a very large country. The opportunity is immense. But to give you an idea from a registration perspective about devices, there were around or close to 12,000 approvals last year, broken down into new registrations, renewals, and some adjustments or administrative change, with a breakdown of 2/3 devices to 1/3 IVD. This is specific to imported products as well as higher risk domestic products. The lower risk domestic products go through a slightly a different pathway. They go through the provincial regulatory pathway rather than the national regulatory pathway, which is based in the capital, Beijing. Here's a trend over the last few years to show you what the registration numbers have looked like and how there's continued momentum in the market for and thirst for not only domestic but international medical device registrations. There was a dip in 2018 due to some a regulatory change, which meant that it became much more difficult to register products. But since then, there has been a strong rebound, and the momentum continues in 2023, I expect. In terms of product categories, this table just shows a little outline over the last number of years. It's fairly consistent in terms of the top product categories that are registered in China, with medical imaging now medical imaging equipment now being the top imported class 2 and 3 product category registered in China. Passives, implantables, followed by protective equipment, dental instruments, which has long been a very strong area of demand for imported products, as well as neurological and cardiovascular surgical instruments, rounding out the top 5. Okay, now moving into some of the specific pathways for registering your product in China. A customer, for example, or a company, a manufacturer, comes to Kizema and says, "Okay, I've got a medical imaging product, or I've got a dental implant. How do I go about actually getting it into the market? What are the first steps?" We talk about 4 broad buckets. There's the mainland direct application, and that most specifically means going to the regulatory authority which is located in Beijing. China is a very centralized country. Beijing is the capital where our largest office and of course most of the regulatory authorities are based. This is what we call an NMPA application, the National Medical Products Administration for short, or China FDA, as it used to be known. If you go to the China NMPA with your medical device to seek to get it registered for approval in the market, you need to have home country approval first. That's the general rule. So you need your US FDA approval, and you also need a certain amount of data to support your application. Otherwise, you may well need to do clinical trials in China in addition. We're going to talk about some ways to determine whether that's really required for your product. But the default for higher risk products is that you may need clinical trial data in China as well. There are some fast track pathways. So there is a priority review, there's an emergency approval, and there's a conditional approval. I'm not going to spend too much time on this in the short time available in this session, but these are faster track pathways available for products that are in need or for products that have particular demand from a regulatory or governmental authority perspectives, and there are specific lists that support these in determining whether your product is needed here, as well as for innovative products, and that's the perhaps the most interesting. I suggest, in addition to the standard application, is the innovative medical device application that does not require home country approval first. So you can look to a global strategy for your China as well as your US product launches, provided you first have a China patent. So that's the precondition. But if you do have a China patent, you can make your submission to NMPA for approval via the innovative designation pathway, even if you don't first have home country approval. The innovative designation also enables some help when you're going through the approval process, because you get appointed a dedicated reviewer early on in the approval process. In addition, after you start selling into the market, this can help your product with sales in the market itself, because this is seen as attractive to KOLs or other the hospitals who are seeking to purchase your products, the distributors who want to sell your products. So this can help with pricing. And in addition, from a public hospital tendering process, innovative designated products generally sit outside any volume-based procurement purchasing requirements. The other alternative pathways, there are two broad buckets I just mentioned very briefly. One is what we call the Greater Bay Area. That's the Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Macau, Guangzhou Greater Bay Area in the south of China. It has a population of 18 million people. That's 80 million, and it is the richest part of one of the wealthiest areas of China, with a high demand for international products. The way this pathway works is you first need to sell your product into Hong Kong, and Hong Kong has a different system to mainland China for the purposes of product registration. In fact, you can start selling your medical device in Hong Kong tomorrow. It's a voluntary process for registration. Once you do start selling, you voluntarily list to register in Hong Kong. Then you can seek to sell into the Greater Bay Area, just the Greater Bay Area, I should add. If you then want to sell China-wide, you still need to go to the NMPA in Beijing. But if you succeed in selling into the GBA itself, that is a substantial market, and it allows you to gather some real-world data as well, which can help for your subsequent China-wide approvals. Hainan is another alternative pathway. It is an island. Hainan itself is an island off the south coast of China. It's known as China's Hawaii, and it's seeking, this is a pilot zone, medical tourism pilot zone, seeking to capture some of those travelers which is relatively common in Asia, who travel overseas for medical procedures, which can be cheaper and can be combined with a holiday as well. It requires home country approval first and also goes direct to hospitals. It allows you to gather some real world data, which can help with your KOL education, and also with your subsequent China-wide approvals by reducing, for example, required China trial numbers. Now, a few points just about the filing and registration timelines. So for a class 1 product, that's the low risk products, approximately equivalent to US FDA class 1. This timeline is relatively short. It's a filing. It takes 2 to 4 months in our experience, and it's just document based. It is a relatively straightforward process. The key points are just getting the documentation right and translation into Chinese, because all documentation must be submitted in Chinese. High risk products, on the other hand, class 2 and 3. This timeline and process is a more detailed one, and I'm just going to walk through what that looks like in our experience. First, there's a document collection process that starts with standard checklist and templates. So, if a company asks, what do I need to start with? There are, of course, your product IFU is a key documentation upon which is then written a PTR, or product technical requirements. And that is a document that is equally as important as the certificate itself. In fact, it is appended to the certificate, and will often be requested by distributors and by purchasers, hospitals who want to see this documentation. The PTR goes through a number of phases throughout, versions or phases throughout the registration process. But most importantly, at the beginning, it is the document which sets out the parameters along which you need to do testing in China. So you will need to do some testing in China as part of the registration process. To do so, you first need to ship your samples to China. Then you need to get them tested in a certified test lab in China. In our experience, that process takes 3 to 6 months. In parallel, you can also work on your clinical documentation, or if necessary, your clinical trial in China. The clinical evaluation report is the preferred option, because if a clinical trial is required, of course, that substantially adds to cost and time to market. The CER, clinical evaluation report, is not simply a translation of your US or EU documentation. It needs to be written specifically for the China market according to China standards. It needs to be written or submitted in Chinese. And it's a very important document, of course, to try to confirm the safety and efficacy of the product. The rest of the registration process may be somewhat, or looks somewhat similar. There's a document preparation stage, which can be done in parallel with some of the other steps, followed by the submission. The actual submission to the regulatory authority happens you're sort of halfway along here, because you first need the type test report. The NMPA then reviews in a technical review, 60 days for class 2, 90 days for class 3, whereafter it will issue a supplementary notice which asks further questions of the company. There's then a further submission and review by NMPA before the administrative approval and certificate issuance. Total timeline in our experience, 18 months for class 2 products, 21 months for class 3 products. This is assuming no clinical trials are required. What about cost? There is an application fee that needs to be paid at the time you submit the dossier to NMPA. That application fee depends on the risk class. For class 1 products, it's just a filing. There is no application fee. For a class 2 product, there is an application fee that is paid to the governmental authority of around 30,000 USD. For a class 3 product, it's around 45,000 USD. I mentioned timelines. Class 1, I'll just reiterate, is around 4 months. Class 2 is 18 months. Class 3 is 21 months. And to fill out the cost picture, I want to emphasize that it is not just the governmental authority fee, of course, which is part of your total cost planning. In addition, there's the type tests which need to be done in China. That can be relatively substantial as well, because of the work that goes into getting the products through the test lab. The importation of the product itself, document based costs like notarization, as well as translation from English into Chinese. There's quite substantial documentation required, and in that includes now, for example, the QMS. The regulatory authority will generally require the full QMS to be translated into Chinese for submission. Total ballpark figures, you're looking at around 120,000 USD for a class 2 product, or 170,000 USD for a class 3 product. That's sort of all in cost, including application fee, including type tests, including other external cost, translation, including consultant advisory fees. That's an approximate ballpark figure. I realize that I'm starting to come to time. I'm just going to mention 1 or 2 other topics briefly. Another key consideration you'll need to be aware of if you're not already in the market, and I'm conscious that some companies on the presentation today are, but there are 3 broad options for the local representative for your company before the regulatory authority. The submission must be made by a Chinese entity. You have 3 broad options for that. Your distributor, which is often the default option, your own subsidiary, or an independent third party. The distributor is often the default option, but we caution our customers about defaulting directly to using the distributor for the local representative, or the NMPA legal agent, which is what we would call the local authorized rep. That's because you need to provide very substantial data as part of this submission, and so there are IP risks here. Distributors often are manufacturers in their own right. In addition, there are substantial post-market responsibilities, and the distributor should be focused on your sales, not on ensuring the ongoing regulatory compliance, and they may miss things or drop the ball there. Own subsidiary also has time and cost set up if that's not already done. But it is the belts and braces approach, and longer term makes sense if you're in the market. An independent third party is also a possibility. Kazem acts in this role for many companies, and it allows you flexibility, for example, to work with more than one distributor. China is such a large market. Alex is going to talk a little bit more about that shortly. So you want flexibility to have full distributor coverage for the market. And if you're already in the market and wondering why your volumes aren't reflective of market size, that may be one concern, is that you need to have distributor coverage in different provinces, cities throughout the very large country that is China. Very briefly in the last few minutes, just touch on localization, because that is a question. There has been a drive in the last few years to have made in China products preferred for purchases. However, high-end medical devices, imported products from international companies in the US are still dominating and in high demand. Chinese consumers also like and trust international products. There are headwinds to this, including some practical difficulties at a bidding or purchasing or tendering platform level. However, those difficulties are often overplayed by some local partners, and so that's the core message I'd encourage you to think about is be thoughtful with your local partners, be well advised, including into the post-market sales stage. And that brings me to my final slide. I won't, given timing, I won't talk about localization in particular if you are seeking to localize, but I will share them in the slides that circulate to guests and attendees afterwards. So what are the top tips? Start your regulatory discussions early in your feasibility discussion to determine if you need to do a clinical trial in China or what data you can gather in addition in your US trials or from predicates that are in the China market already that allow you to get quicker time to market. That includes the pathways to market, going through Hong Kong first or going to Hainan. Can you go the innovative pathway? Think about all those things up front. Understand the testing requirements in China. This is a key pain point for many companies. Consider some validation testing in advance according to relevant Chinese standards. We can help identify what those are if you have questions. Also, the test labs, of course, you know your product better than anyone, and the test lab now needs to, the test lab in a foreign country with no familiarity with your product now needs to check it versus the relevant China standards. This therefore can lead to some confusion and miscommunications. So substantial education up front, especially with your local consultant, is highly advised. Also encourage you to not just treat China like another export market. It has its very own peculiarities, including the distributor versus or in association with the consulting or other third-party advisories. Think about how to structure those relationships and be thoughtful with your local partners. I encourage you also not to just rely on your distributor in China, but draw on your other resources, like MyCaribou, like Intralink, to source the best possible partner. Think long term and also stay objective. There are a lot of course, misconceptions about China, but there are also concerns and risks with going into the market. So encourage you to stay thoughtful and well advised and plan well, but don't let that hold you back for entering the market, the very large and substantial market that is China. With that, here are some details, and I'm going to pass it over to Alex, who's going to take you through some of the broader market considerations about selling into the China market.
We're going to transition here over to Alex. I just encourage you to submit questions. I know a lot of you submitted them in advance, which we'll try to get to as well, but feel free to keep putting those in the Q&A panel, and we'll start to have a look at those as we get towards the Q&A session. So Alex, on to you.
Thank you very much. Before jumping to my part of presentation, I would like to commend the previous speaker. Hamish did a really good job to not only demonstrate the first steps in China, entering China market and explaining registration parts, but also looking behind those first steps. And hopefully I can contribute further to this discussion today. So before we explore the strategic approaches of doing business in China, I would like to spend 5 to 7 minutes to introduce you to China healthcare market. It's really important not only to understand your specific niche, but also have kind of a broader understanding of broader environments, broader frameworks within which your business operates. So I would like to start with some basic facts about China, some fundamental insights. The most trivial of which is China market is huge. Despite the recent demographic shift that made India the largest country by population size, China remains unmatched, unparalleled by the sheer size of its healthcare coverage. Today, 1.4 billion people, almost entire China population, is covered by the basic medical insurance, and this coverage in terms of numbers is and will remain unmatched in the foreseeable future. China healthcare spending is very substantial. Today it stands at $1.2 trillion US. which is only second to the US and on par with the entirety of the European Union. Just to provide you some context. I think the important thing is the trajectory. It's going upwards. Just 5 years ago, the healthcare expenditures were around 900 billion. This growth is aligned with China's general strategy to match its healthcare standards with those of the developed countries, namely OECD Club. So as you can see, China is still lagging behind OECD in terms of healthcare expenditures as percentage of GDP. But with 7% of GDP spent on healthcare, China is much higher than other developed countries. We mentioned India, so India only spends 3% of GDP on its healthcare. Now, the huge investment in healthcare directly reflects into the size of the medical device market, which today is around 160 billion. Again, second only trailing the US market and on par with the entire European Union market. And just as healthcare expenditures, as we can see from this slide, the medical device market is again set for growth. In fact, it doubled in size within just 5 years' time. Quite impressive if we consider that we had COVID period during this time. Now, in terms of key factors for further development of China healthcare market, undoubtedly aging population will be the major factor. Today, 20% of Chinese people are over 60 years old, which amounts to 280 million. But again, for us, the more important thing is future. And within just 25 years, think about it, within 25 years, there will be 500 million people over the age of 60. Life expectancy that is growing up and very low fertility rate both contribute to what is societal issue and a huge challenge for China. But for medical device market, it can present very valuable opportunities. China, speaking of the healthcare infrastructure, China has a robust infrastructure, 37,000 hospitals and over 1 million of grassroots healthcare units, which in terms of hospital beds per 1,000 population makes Chinese infrastructure 3 times as large as the US. So China has 6.9 hospital beds and the US has only 2.3. China has a huge army of clinical workers, almost 15 million people, which again, in terms of clinicians per 1,000 of population, makes China ahead of the US as well. Now let's move on and speak a little bit about the healthcare system through its fundamental pillars, those being delivery system, funding system, and administration mechanism. I have briefly mentioned that China has 30,000 hospitals across the country. They are classified in 3 classes, class 1, class 2, and class 3. This classification is based on the number of clinicians, the inpatient capacity, and so on and so forth. For us, the important is to make, to explain the how this breaks down in terms of public-private hospitals. So China has public and private hospitals, and although public hospitals are relatively few in numbers, we see there are only, relatively of course, 11,000 of them out of 37,000, which is around 34%. It contributes to a huge number of patient visits. Almost 84% of Chinese patients go to those few public hospitals. There is historical reason for this, which I will not elaborate on. But another important factor is that class 3, those largest hospitals, which are again very few in numbers, only 3,500 of them, again, they contribute to a large number of those patient visits. So for many medical device companies, class 3 hospitals become the major playground in China. Now, I also mentioned briefly in previous slide that China is unmatched in terms of its healthcare coverage. And this is based around two insurance plans. One is known as Urban Employee Basic Medical Insurance, or UBMI, which is employee-based insurance, and the other non-employee insurance plan known as Urban and Rural Residence Medical Insurance, or URRMI, are the two major plans you can choose from. The first is funded by contributions from the employee and employer, and the second one consists from contributions from the individuals and also government allocations. So, speaking of these two plans, I think that many people would assume that employee-based insurance is dominant in China, and it should, but it's not actually the case. As you see, only 26% of population are covered with employee-based insurance. While the majority, almost 1 billion people, are covered with non-employee-based insurance plan. This is the result of prevalence of gray salary schemes between employee and employees in China. That results that many people choose the second plan. And there is an issue. I mentioned that this plan has contributions from individuals and governments. So it usually runs deficit. On the right-hand side of the picture, you see the table from uncovering the funds of the plan, its income and its expenses. And as you can see, almost immediately, the income are offset by the expenses, and the fund is almost depleted in the same year. This leads to a chronic deficit of the urban and rural insurance fund. This often results in public hospitals, having issues with reimbursements, specifically with delays, especially by the year end when the funds are depleted. Now, as we observe, China faces an issue. Also, it has established this universal medical coverage. The system is, we can say, it's not very sustainable, and it's largely depends on central government allocations. In which respect the administration mechanism, effective administration mechanism, becomes very, very critical. So China has a number of initiatives and tools of how to make its system more transparent and control the cost. Among this, diagnostic-related groups has recently been introduced. I'm sure that you're familiar with DRG, but in China, until recently, there were no caps on the expenses according to diagnostic-related groups. It's changing now. The other tool that is widely used is adjusting of standards of medical services for public hospitals. So China operates through the regulators operate through price catalogs that they adjust, and by doing so, they can change prices within whole value chain. So just to give you an example, this is an excerpt from a price catalog of Shanghai municipality. I know it's a little bit confusing. Many things are in Chinese, but I comfortably provide some translation for the MRI prices in Shanghai public hospitals. So as you can see, depending on field of strength, there are only 3 types of prices that can be used by all the hospitals. And then again, imagine if these prices went down by 10%, what it will mean for the medical device manufacturers and whole value chain. Now, of course, there are other ways to administer the healthcare system. There are centralized procurement offices that make volume-based procurements. This is a big thing for medical consumables. There are so-called sunshine procurement platforms, which are public bidding platforms where you can see all the information about the bidders, their prices, and so on and so forth. So the administration system is very important, and understanding it is important as well. Now, I hope that everything I explained so far makes sense. I understand that it's quite difficult to cram all this information into 5 to 7 minutes presentation. However, I do think it's important to provide this context before we jump into the second part of the presentation, which is go-to-market strategies. Now, as we jump into market strategies, it is crucial. It is important to acknowledge that there is no one-size-fits-it-all strategies that can work for everyone, depending on where you are, whether you sell in vitro diagnostic consumables, medical devices, raw materials, surgical consumables. Everything will be different, starting from your end users to the value chain lengths, and to the tricks of the trade that you apply to market your product and sell it into your customer. So usually I encourage companies to answer several questions before they decide to enter China. So you need to clearly identify who is your client in China. And this can be private, public hospital, it can be medical device company, it can be something else. I just listed 3 as an example. The second question, which is important, extremely important, is what are the main links in the value chain between me and the final user. The product journey will be different for different product categories. I will explain it a little bit later, but it can go through distributors, sub-distributors, sometimes sunship procurement platforms already mentioned. Sometimes it skips that and goes to hospital equipment department. Sometimes you need to go through doctors. And lastly, the third question that worth considering is, how is business won in my niche in China? Sometimes it's a standard repeat business if you sell kind of a staple product and you are already in the sunshine procurement platform, for example. But more often than not, it's hard sell, cold calls, gate crashes to hospitals, or sometimes you rely on KOLs to successfully sell your product in China. So let's provide some details to every strategy, to every product category. So if, for example, you are in vitro diagnostic consumable manufacturer, we mentioned already that China, almost 84% of people go to public hospitals, which is where all the labs are. So perhaps you simply focus on those public hospitals, class 3, as your major playground. You most likely need a distributor and a set of sub-distributors across the country. And if you sell consumables, you will have to go to register to file yourself on the Sunshine procurement platform. So this is your value chain lengths. And finally, if you are already in the platform and your product is recognized, it's kind of a staple business, staple product that will be automatically ordered by the hospitals where you already have sales. So it's kind of a standard repeat business in a way. Now, if you're a medical device company, you may aim different end users. Sometimes it's public hospitals, but sometimes it can be private hospitals, because different fields may have predominantly have services predominantly in private sphere. Your value chain will probably necessitate a master distributor, sub-distributors, but you will not go to Sunshine procurement platform. You will most likely deal with hospital equipment departments. You will rely on hard sales. Most likely, you'll have to go to find ways to meet hospitals, doctors, and perhaps you will need a relationship business based on KOLs, etc. The raw material is the shortest and most direct, straightforward business. You're probably aiming medical medical companies as your end users. You most likely rely on distributor. Sometimes you do direct sales, and hard sell is your main tool. And finally, surgical consumable, again, quite similar with the medical devices. Sometimes you need public hospitals, but sometimes you will depending on the niche, you will aim private hospitals as well. Distributors, sub-distributors, financial procurement platforms, we already discussed it was in other product categories. More often than not, you will have doctors, KOLs, to promote your product, to create word of mouth to help you to sell. And so there is a variety of tools of how your product, your business is won in this specific area. So moving further ahead, I would like to introduce you to some tricks of the trade when operating with when operating within China market. The most important rule in the playbook is understanding your final user, end user. This understanding is vital, as each category has its specific nuances. So let's talk about public hospital business. We mentioned that class 3 hospitals is probably where you would like to go. But going there, depending on your niche, will require different methods, different tools. If you are in consumable business, you will have to enter those public bidding platforms, and it will take time. It will probably take sometimes years, because every province in China, which are 20 plus different provinces, and on the top of that, you also have other regions, so to speak. So covering them all will take time. This procedure is quite lengthy. The other interesting aspect of working with public hospitals is that sub-distributors usually take a significant margin in your margin distribution. So please take a look on the right-hand side, where I try to demonstrate a quite common distribution of margin between brand master distributor and sub-distributor. So as you can see, sub-distributor can take up to 60% of the margin. Why is this the case? We explain how those deviations in insurance plan results in hospitals not receiving the funds, and more often than not, this results in very long payment terms for sub-distributors as the final last mile deliverer to the hospital. So they bear this risk. Sometimes their payment terms would be between 6 to 12 months. On the top of that, they are usually responsible for maintaining a relationship with the hospitals, and so there are marketing expenses and so on. So let's assume that your product transfer price into hospital is X. Then the price from master distributor to sub-distributor would be somewhere around 0.5, 0.5x, and your price to the master distributor will probably be 0.1, 0.2x. And this is quite commonly observed in different medical device clients. So I would say it's quite usual picture. Now, volume-based procurement is shaping this industry, and it's a challenge for medical device manufacturers overall. China tries to use significant leverage by using large volumes against low prices. And just to give you an example, in prices for hard surgical stents, after this volume-based procurement were initiated in the industry, it led to the price decrease by 92%. So whichever, if your product is subjected for volume-based procurement, you have to be ready for such challenges. And finally, sometimes, depending on the situation, Many people ask about reimbursement, but in some situation you are not seeking. You may not seek for that in China, exactly because volume-based procurement may very much affect your margin in China. So you would want actually to stay out of reimbursement system. Now, private hospitals are much easier space. You just negotiate price and you make a deal. It's pretty, sometimes depending on your product, you may target private hospitals. I mentioned that already, but speaking more specifically in ophthalmology space and stomatology space, actually private hospitals will be your main market. Now, speaking of medtech companies as your end users, I think very specific characteristics of Chinese clients is their notorious inability to pay for NRE. They're not prepared for this. You need to have ready-to-use solution to sell into China, and it will be very hard to make your client to pay for any adjustments. The other thing is, when you deal with China, you can expect to have very large orders, but Chinese companies are very tough negotiators, so price should also reflect that. Now, my final slide would be how to be successful in China. I think the important thing is to have vision of the market and your product place in the market. Just to give you an example of a case where a company is not prepared and not having vision. One of my clients operating in ultra-sensitive diagnostic space came to China advertising itself as as a company with which platform is suitable for early detection of multiple sclerosis. It was the main the main message. But they soon realized that China multiple sclerosis incidence actually 20 times lower than in the Western countries. So it was a wrong positioning. We changed it, but I think it demonstrates how envisioning yourself clearly in the market, how important it is. The second thing that decides your success in the market is the product. You need to have ready-to-use solution. I mentioned this already. Chinese are not prepared for any investments in NRE, so you need to have specifically designed product for China to be successful. Logistics is might not seem obvious, but for some niches, it's a very important factor, especially if you operate in, for example, in biomaterials or consumables. Securing flawless entry into China will be essential for your ultimate success. Partners is an obvious factor of success. So you need to make sure that you create a long list and you go to a short list, and that you select your partner wisely. And finally, a game plan. I argue that it's better to have a somewhat speculative plan than not to have any plan about China that should be at least for 3 to 5 years after you enter the country. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. Thank you all very much. Just a quick reminder, again, we have a webinar next Thursday, February 1st, around our foreign exchange and hedging solution. I introduced it earlier in the presentation today. There is a link there to sign up. It's about 30 minutes. For those of you that are going to stay on beyond the hour here, I'm actually going to do a quick demo of the platform, although I know a lot of you are already on the platform as I looked at the registrations in advance. But I do want you, if you are on the platform and you want to have a peek at our financial solutions around foreign exchange and hedging, I actually am going to show that today as well. And I'll do it about a 5 or 6 minute demo for the whole platform. So I really want to thank Hamish and Alex. It is almost 1 a.m. their time in mainland China and in Hong Kong. Really appreciate both of you doing this today. a lot of great content. I was a big ask to get you guys to squeeze that into a short allotted time, but hopefully this was good for the audience. I saw some good comments there, and their contact information is on the screen. Feel free to reach out to them. They are experts in the field, and as you saw today, they've just got a wealth of knowledge, information that they can pass on to you. So with that, I'm going to
we can
wrap
get too
up.
enthusiastic. You get too enthusiastic sometimes, Craig. But
Yeah.
thanks very much for the time. And if anyone has any further questions or follow-ups afterwards, please get in touch with Alex or myself on regulatory matters. I'd be pleased to speak with you. And thank you again for My Caribou for the platform webinar.
Likewise.
Our pleasure. Yep. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Sure, it was a privilege. Unfortunately, the time is running up, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the audience may have. So please feel free to reach out.
Really appreciate that, guys. Thank you all for attending today. I am going to just switch over now to a quick demo for those of you that want to stay on. And I say quick, I'll be like 5 or 6 minutes. I'll give you the quickest tour you can get. And we will send a copy of the deck to everyone as well with contact information, any unanswered questions, a link to the video for today's presentation. But I'll just, and I know many of you are on the platform, but again, just as a refresher, I will touch on the FX and payments, which is brand new, launched just before the holidays, actually. Long time in the making, but I'll give you a quick touch point on that as well. All right, so the platform itself, really the key things that we do are help you discover and learn about markets, find partners to connect within markets if you're a distributor looking for suppliers or a manufacturer looking for distribution. And we also have partner management capabilities here. And then lastly, our foreign exchange and payments. So I'll just show you very quickly. If you want to look at markets around the world, we have a global view. We cover about 150 countries in terms of distribution. We have market data on about 105 countries. And again, I won't get into details here, but basically every market, we give you an overview of the market with things like expenditure and financing, assets, employment, et cetera, and then a quick regulatory overview of each of those markets. If you're looking to find partners, there's really 2 key ways to do it. You could do a simple search for distribution. So let's say distributors and sales agents. And I'm going to use just Brazil because I just brought that up on the screen. I'll use that as a quick example. From there, you've got about 1,100 distributors. You can subset that now into, let's say we're looking for continents products. And from there, you could look at each of these distributors, learn more about them, their website, their LinkedIn page. And ultimately, if you're ready to connect to them, you can connect to them through the platform and start discussions about potential partnerships. So that, I sort of equate that to an outbound approach to finding partners. From there, you can start to shortlist and search for specific partners, put them on your short list, and start to really nail down who you're going to work with in those markets. The other way to find partners, and I think frankly a more powerful way, is through what we call opportunity posts. So these are live posted opportunities from companies all over the world looking for partners. So for example, here's one, a company that's looking for distribution in Australia of their closed wound drainage system. So they are specifically looking for partners in Australia. They've highlighted that in here and explained what they're looking for. I'll show you another one, an example of, here's one, Cardinal Health in Canada, looking for surgical carbon steel blades, I should say, for Canadian hospitals. That's a distributor looking for a supplier. The first one I showed you was a supplier looking for a distributor. This part has a bit of like a dating kind of concept to it, where it takes your profile and the profile of what the company is looking for in the opportunity, and will match score them. I'm in as My Caribou, so my match scores will all be 0, but you could actually sort opportunities by those most closely matched to you as a company. So finding partners through partner searches, connection requests, and then opportunity posts, as I mentioned, are key aspects of this. We also have a whole set of tools to manage those partnerships all over the world, and you can do that, market by market. You could group it by your partners. So in some cases, your partner might be covering multiple markets for you. And the tool then becomes a way to communicate with one all of your partners, share files, videos, training, updates, do sales forecasts together, put business plans together for those markets, all through this set of tools around partner management and communication. I'll move lastly into our foreign exchange and payments functionality. And again, we're going to do a webinar on this next week. Hopefully you'll attend that and get a better sense of the platform. But I'll just show you very quickly what I'm seeing in my view is I have 5 wallets. So if let's say you're in Europe and you're selling into markets all over the world, you're probably going to have a need for your euros, perhaps USD. Maybe you've got some suppliers that you're letting them pay you in their local currency. In any case, you would have wallets for these different currencies. And we really do 2 things. One is we give you much more competitive spot rates, real-time rates relative to what the banks are doing. And the second thing is we can allow you to reduce the volatility by locking those great rates in for up to 350 days. So I'm actually just going to show you a quick example here. So I'm going to use a real example for me, which is moving money between Canada and the United States, or Canadian dollars and US dollars, I should say. So I'm just going to give you an example of a $10,000. I want to buy USD, and I'm going to just do a spot rate as opposed to a future hedge, I should say. And I'm just going to show you. I want this point to really be clear for everyone. The rate I'm getting is 1.347910, 1.347 basically. So it cost me $13,479 to buy 10,000 USD. Now, just to show you how competitive our rates are, I did this with my bank earlier. So I move back and forth between Canada and the US. We hold a lot of Canadian dollars, US dollars back and forth. I looked at it before the presentation. It was 1.3815%. That's a difference of 3.3% on currency. And think about it going both directions. That would basically double for me moving money between CAD and USD, or euros and USD, or whatever. So we can also, though, that's massively, if you talk about margins, the guys were just talking about margins selling into China, et cetera. Margins are so critical in our business, and saving, upwards of 3% in that case, this simple example on the screen, is really powerful. The second key thing, though, is that I could lock that in for up to 350 days. Not that specific rate. It'll give you different rates for different time periods, obviously. But I could lock it in for currency volatility. I'll give you an example. I was talking to an Australian distributor recently, and their currency had swung 20% against the euro over the past 12 months. Imagine what that does to their margins. So most of you on the call today are manufacturers, but you're dealing with distributors all over the world. The margin that they're getting is critical to how much of your product they're going to sell. And so if they're getting hammered on exchange rates, if they're getting hammered on volatility, it will affect your relationship with them. And it's one of the things that our manufacturer customers are really starting to realize is this is powerful for both distributors, but also from a manufacturer perspective. So I'm going to leave it at that. I said I would do a 5 or 6 minute demo. Looks like I held to my word there. We are obviously more than happy to do a deeper dive anytime you want to see it further. You can also sign up for free to try the platform. And I think Angela has already put the link in the chat for that. But if you have any direct questions, feel free to ask about anything I showed today as well. Our support is online live here as well, if you're in the platform and you have some questions about the functionality. So on that note, I want to thank Alex and Hamish. I appreciate the time. Thank you all for joining today. Many of you stayed on for the demo. I appreciate that as well. Have a fantastic rest of the day, rest of the week. Bye, everyone.